Okay. Our topic is investigation of social exclusion in immigrant neighborhoods in a case study of Barriero di Milano. About the social exclusion has a different concept and meaning. It is related to groups at risk of exclusion, people, exclusion problems, and actors in different levels. Social exclusion refers to groups such as single parents, the suicidal addicts, which are in contrast with livelihood, secure employment, education, welfare benefits, and other like this. Generally, social exclusion is about inability to participate effectively in economic, social, and cultural life, also distance from mainstream society. In part of history of social exclusion, the concept of that is originated in France during 1960s. Following the economic crisis in 1980s, it was spread to European countries. In 2000, Lisbon strategy turned social exclusion into a main part of Europe policies. Lack of program of activities and very little actions were the most important problems at the first period. But at the second period, a coordinated program started from Brussels and focused on social planning and development on fighting social exclusion. Following these problems, the year of 2010 was designated as European Year of Combating Exclusion and Poverty. In relationship between social exclusion and immigrant neighborhood, increases in immigration have made it as important policy to support by European countries. Research on social exclusion among immigrants has focused on bully victimization, but there are milder forms of exclusion. The phenomenon of international migrations affects on economic, culture, history, and other parts. But there is two main factors in relation with social exclusion and immigrants area. The first one is population under study or immigrants, and the second one is geographical setting. Unfortunately, based on these factors, there are lack of political, economic, social, and cultural participation as symbols of exclusion. When we speak about exclusion, we are referring to groups which political economic system depends on. This explains why non-European immigrants are only considered based on their work identity as cheap labor force.
Well, our study has concentrated on one of the most controversial neighborhoods, mostly in terms of the social challenges in the Torino city. Torino itself was a kind of migration hub for those who seek to find a job in an industrialization, which profoundly shaped the identity of the city from the 18th as the beginning of the post-Fordism, which can be considered a unique laboratory for understanding social dynamics related to migration and integration, and the roles played by urban space and city actors in this respect. Nevertheless, has been highly hit by the economic and social consequences of the recent crisis. We've tried to focus on the Barriera di Milano as our case study, which started to develop in the second half of the 19th century as an unplanned build-up area. After fast residential growth during a short period of time, when the building process had already ended, the consequences was this organized urban and housing growth and underdevelopment of services and public spaces. Historically, this is a working class with a strong political mobilization area that created social cohesion and strong local identity, as well as promoting the positive inclusion of internal immigration in the 16th and also 15th. New immigrants arriving in this neighborhood today are confronted with very different urban and socio-economic contexts that are characterized by different views on immigration, intergroup relation, type of conflicts, and resolution. The selected neighborhood located very close to the city's historical center, and this map illustrates the location of the neighborhood within the city. The share of foreigners is around 13% of the total population, much higher than the city average. This share has enormously increased in the last few years. Also, the nationalities are more heterogeneous. There are more than 14 different nationalities there. A third of them are Romanians, nearly 1/4 Moroccans, and 1/5 Chinese. But that's significantly common to see Russians, the Arab nation, African, mostly from the Nigeria, relocating a short trip in this neighborhood. But about our interviews, in the next slide, we've done some random interviews from those who are or were the residents of this neighborhood, at least for some years. According to the native opinions that's understandable to But the extent there are different perceptions about neighborhood in the different generation and nationality, but always some points are common. The abstract of this interview can be summarized in a few basic points, including strength or weakness, that we categorize them in different titles. First of all is perception. Mostly the ones with the older ages remember this area as working class, mostly for poor people. They call it so-called ghetto, that are soaked in the factories, and people came here and used to live in the housing complexes in the vicinity of their working place. And also existence of kind of sense of crown to their neighborhood and gang-style manner was their common statement. About the challenges, the quality of the social participation on behalf of the young generation comparing with the elder people as the first generation who came here and built this area has completely changed rather than in the past. This kind of drug selling, this is the kind of drug selling hub in the city, in the Torino. So many people come here to commit crimes, which terminated the social deviance. For Italians, residents also, this is a debating issue that being a large number of immigrants stole their job opportunity from the Italians. Kind of messed situation and anarchy of the lifestyle, as well as public services, and being afraid of increasing number of immigrants in this area also happened. Close to the variety of different public centers is a kind of positive and strength point of this neighborhood. In the next one, please.
Totally, the causes evaluated from the experts, local people and stakeholders approaches can be categorized in this chart. We organized them in four main reasons, which are material factors, provision of services, familial factors, and individual factors. In detail, family poverty, geographical location, education, social services, housing, transportation, healthcare centers, parents, education, social groups, motivation, gender, and disability can be the main reason which are in face of social exclusion based on our interviews.
Well, in conclusion, Barriere di Milano was extensively affected by the presence of the large factories and specific housing opportunities and the social composition of the resident population made up mostly of workers and immigrants, fostered the development of a common cultural and social background. However, may cause some challenges of the social issues at the same time. They stimulated public and religious service providers to develop innovative responses, leaving a legacy that is still visible today. On the basis of the interviews we've carried on and based on the consequences of the social exclusion, which we mentioned as the main social challenge facing the residents of this neighborhood, we can point out that its share of poor families, individuals dependent on social services, and those with employment difficulties and the average education level is lower. Furthermore, services are not adequate and unequally distributed in this neighborhood. From an urban perspective, most of the abandoned areas are still there, representing obstacle to mobility within the neighborhood and contributing to urban blight and a kind of sense of insecurity among residents. Sociability is also hampered by the lack of spaces, like meeting places and green areas are insufficient, and the demand for a room for culture, recreational and social activities cannot be satisfied. One of the significant challenges within this neighborhood is the high rate of crimes occurred here, including drug selling, using the firearms, stealing, as well as the permanent pride of the disturbing gang. So that's not an exaggeration if we say that the social exclusion process, which began from the long days ago, in this area has significantly influenced and may cause social deviance as the consequences of that within this area. On the other hand, despite of all restriction and barriers within this area in the current situation, different private and public bodies raise their solution and proceed to tackle with these challenges in order to have more balanced neighborhood for the equal participation and proper infrastructure. Something like announcing variety of cultural events, establishing some of the most important land uses as well as city elements at the vicinity of this boundary, encouraging people to know more about the ethnographic potential of this place, also trying to raise and increase the budget to spend more in this area. Overall, Barriera de Mirano is a congested area built on differences among a variety of races, which they gradually find their common issues with each other within their neighborhood. They suffered from some of the basic shortages. However, there is an increased hope that the area gradually perceive better and better after recognition and identifying the strengths and weaknesses, trying to propose some right actions to solve these problems. Thank you. The last slide is about our sources, as you can see.
Thank you so much.